Hi everyone and welcome back. Okay, it's review time. I've got some products here by Arteza. We've got 60 watercolour tubes and we've got 2 A4 travel journal watercolour sketchbooks. Okay, now just for transparency, I'm not getting paid to do these reviews. You know, I'm not being paid to say nice things about these products. Arteza kindly sent me these free of charge for an honest review, so that's exactly what I'll be doing today. So rest assured, if I find anything wrong with these at all, you'll be the first to hear about it. Okay, so we'll take a look at the 60 watercolours in just 1 second. I'll just move these out of the way. First of all, we'll just take a look at these watercolour travel journals. I say travel journal, they're in the travel journal style. They're an A4 size. I've already opened one. We'll just take a look at that in a minute, but first of all, it's cold pressed watercolour paper, dual-sided, acid-free, natural linen bound, which is the cover, obviously. You know, we've not got linen paper in there. It's not, you know, 100% rag paper or anything like that. We've got an expandable inner pocket, ideal for watercolour techniques and mixed media. Okay, the size is 8.3 inches by 11.7. and it's £110 or 230 GSM. 64 pages, and these were both wrapped in cling film when I got them. Not cling film, you know what I mean, the whatever it's called. And you get 2, you know, wrapped up in a pack. Okay, so we've got the securing ribbon there, elasticated band, and we've got somewhere there where you can write your name if you want to. And I've already had a look at this actually, and I'm going to tell you straight away that I was really impressed, because most travel journals that I've used have 2 different sides, 2 different textures on each paper, on each side of the paper, and this one is no different. We've got 2 different textures. This one is definitely a cold press texture, and this side is more like a hot press texture. It's very smooth. So I guess that's what they mean when they say dual-sided. Now I'll just hold that up to the camera for you so you can see the texture there. That's the rougher side, obviously. That's the cold press side. Now if I flip the page over and hold that close to the camera, kind of see that there's a little bit of texture there, but generally it's a lot smoother. Now the good thing about this, every time you turn the page, as you know, you can paint, you know, and this style of sketchbook, you can paint on both sides, you know, do one picture on 2 sides. But usually what happens is you get like a rough piece of paper that side and a smooth piece of paper that side, and it makes your painting look odd. You know, because you've got 2 different textures there, and the water absorbs at different rates and does different things with dry brush techniques and all that kind of stuff. So ideally what we want are for the sides to be matching. You know, every time you open this, what we want is like smooth and smooth, rough and rough. We want everything matching, and that's exactly what we've got here. And I can't say that for any of the other watercolour travel journals that I've ever used. I only found 1 page which didn't match up, and funny enough, it's this one here. That's smooth, that's rough. But after that, I've got 2 smooth sides, 2 rough sides. Everything corresponds so that you can paint across the whole entire surface there of both sides. So straight away, that is absolutely fantastic. Now we'll just take a quick look at the outside. Like it said there, it's natural linen bound, and I must say it feels really nice. It feels really, you know, expensive feel to it. It's really nice finish on there. We've got Arteza embossed. Don't know if you're going to be able to see that, but it's embossed there on the back. And oh yeah, obviously we've got the rounded corners there, which I really like. Really important for travel journals to have that, because they really do get bashed around, you know, in your rucksacks and bags and things like that. So it's great to have the rounded corners on there. And we've got plastic this time. Usually they're paper. these expandable pockets, but this one we've got a plastic one, and this was the leaflet that came with it, so you can have a good look through that if you buy one of these. Got all the products listed in there for you to have a good look at. Okay, and these journals come in 3 sizes. Like I say, this is the A4 size, and you can get an A5 size and an A6 size, but the A6 and the A5 don't open on the long edge there. They actually open on the shorter edge, so they're more like the kind of typical moleskin style travel journals. Okay, forgot to mention as well, a pretty standard issue on one of these things, but we've got, you know, a page divider there as well. So far it ticks all of the boxes. The binding looks good. We've got, you know, nice strong sewn binding there. It opens flat. As soon as you start to get into the middle of the book, you know, it starts to not open quite so flat, but a little press down, no seam splitting, and it opens completely flat. Really nice. So if we go further on in the book, again, all you just need to do is a light press down, and that will stay nice and flat for you. So far that ticks all the boxes, and I can't wait to do a little painting on that for you, just to make sure that everything is okay with that paper. Hopefully it should be, but you never know, you never know. Okay, so let's take a look at the watercolours now. Okay, so we've got a box of 60 tubes here, and instantly, before I even open them, I liked what they've done there on the lid. They've given us all the information that we need. If I just bring that closer, if I can get that in the frame there for you, you can obviously see the little colour swatches there at the side, printed on, of course. The colour names, there's a number there as well, but they've also provided us with pigment numbers, light fast rating, and the transparency. You can see it there. Look, we've got kind of three little symbols there for transparency, and if you have a quick look now, you'll notice that a lot of these colours in here are all transparent. Sorry, are all opaque. The solid white square there follows through on most of these colours. There's a few there which are kind of semi-opaque. You know, some more there which are kind of semi-opaque, but I don't think, oh yeah, we've got one there, the ultramarine blue, which is transparent, neon pink, which is transparent, but apart from that, I think they're the only 2 colours, in fact, that come with the transparent symbol there. Yes, they are. So there's only actually 2 transparent colours in there. The rest are all mostly opaque or semi-opaque. So I know a lot of people out there don't like opaque watercolours. They like very transparent watercolours. Honestly, for me, I'm not bothered at all. In my usual palette, I do use opaque colours. I even use white. I'm one of these people that have nothing against white at all, and I enjoy using that, you know, with my usual watercolours. Some of the watercolours I've got, like yellow ochre, some of the cadmium colours that I use, they're opaque, and I really enjoy using them. So for me personally, opacity in watercolours is not a problem at all. Okay, but all the information is there for you to have a look at, and like I say, all the pigment numbers are there as well. Just a quick word about the pigment numbers as well. It seems to start off looking fairly good. We've just got single pigments there, then it goes to 2 pigments, back to single pigments, then it starts getting into 3 pigments, 2 pigments, 3 pigments, and the further on you go, we're sort of getting into 3 and 4 pigments for each colour. When I say 3 or 4 pigments, I mean pigment numbers, so you know they've obviously mixed quite a few different colours there just to get this one colour. Okay, and again, sometimes that can bother people. You know, a lot of people like single pigment colours, and they like to mix their own colours from those single pigment colours, which is a good idea. I'm on board with that, but again, for convenience sake, I don't mind having colours pre-mixed, you know, with several colours. If I like the colour, I like the colour, and I don't care if it's opaque and how many pigment numbers you know, are involved with that colour. Doesn't bother me at all. Okay, now the light fast rating, I'm presuming we've got 3 crosses there and 2 crosses there with a minus next to it. I don't think that minus actually means anything, because it's on here as well, the pigment number and the transparency, so I don't think that implies that 2 stars is less than 3 stars. Now Arteza do some funny light fast ratings. I noticed this with their watercolour pencils, so I'm going to have to find out and maybe write in the description whether 3 means more light fast than 2, or 2 means more light fast than 3, because I think on the watercolour pencils, the smaller the star rating, the more light fast it is. So that's very confusing actually. So I will look into that and try and find out more information on that and put that in the description for you. Okay, so let's get these open. Well, just quickly show you the box there. It's nothing special. We've got just the usual blah 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 on there. So 60 watercolours, premium watercolours. Now don't let that fool you, they are student quality watercolours. So premium doesn't really mean anything, but they are good quality, you know, student watercolours. So we've got 5 rows in here, 5 rows deep of tube paints. Okay. In fact, I'll get them all out and set them all up on the desk. Okay, so there we go, that's all 60 colours out there. We get 6 colours in each tray, and each tube is 12mm, so that's pretty good. Now the price of all these is quite astonishing actually, for 60 tubes of paint that are 12mm each. In English money it's only $39.99, not too sure what that is in dollars, but there will be links in the description below for this, so you can check out all the prices there. But for $39.99 for 60 12mm tubes is a bargain, isn't it? Now when you hear that price you think, well, they can't be very good then at that price, you know. You usually get what you pay for, so I'm not going to expect too much with these paints. But I might be very pleasantly surprised. You never know. I was with the watercolour pencils that they sent to me. I couldn't believe the pigment strength of them. Hopefully it'll be the same scenario with these. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to swatch them out, but I'm not going to bore you with that. I'll speed the video up for the swatching. I'll just bring one of the tubes in there for you nice and close, just so that you can see. You know, we've actually got pigment numbers written on the tube as well. If my camera will focus, yeah, there you go. It's not that number there, it's that number there. So the pigment numbers are on there, the light fast ratings on there, the colour names on there. And there's the back of it. They've got the ASTM safety thing on there as well, so there we go. Now I'll just say a quick something about actually having a palette of 60 colours. Now don't get me wrong, I'm doing this review with the attitude of gratitude. You know, I was sent these paints for free and I was so pleased and so grateful to receive them. But 60 colours is really too much for any palette, but the fact that I only use 12 colours generally on my palette, and I have a few other colours which I kind of switch in and out from time to time, but generally in any one painting I only probably use 4 or 5 colours in any one painting. And I always recommend to my beginners over on Patreon, or to anybody that just asks, you know, it's always best to start with a limited palette, get to know those colours well, get to understand how they interact and how they mix with each other, because trying to learn all that with 60 colours is going to be really overwhelming. It's going to get so confusing, particularly for the people that these paints are aimed at, you know, beginners. But on the other hand, there are those people out there that don't like to mix colours. They just like to have loads of convenience colours just to dip into, personally, I don't like doing that. I don't think you get the colour harmonies in the paintings that you get when you're working from a limited palette. So I'll just say that straight away. But to actually have 60 colours is not a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying this is a bad thing to have 60 colours. You know, it's actually a good thing for a beginner, because it's going to get them into watercolour at a very reasonable price for loads and loads of different colours, and you can experiment and pick out a nice palette from these, and you have got a really full palette. I mean, you can get a lovely selection of skin tones, a lovely selection of landscape colours. It's all there. You know, you really don't need to buy any more colours than this. Now, the unfortunate thing about this is, and I don't know why Arteza aren't doing this, because it's the one thing that kind of lets them down, in my opinion. They're not doing open stock on any of their products, so you can't just buy, you know, one of these colours on its own, which is a shame, because I'm bound to like some of these colours in here, and I'm bound to want to replace the tube, you know, when it's empty. It's always the case with me whenever I buy different manufacturers' paints. I might like an ultramarine blue by one manufacturer, and then I might like a burnt sienna from another manufacturer. So I kind of, you know, replace the tubes with my favourite ones. Unfortunately, you can't do that with this set, and I wish Arteza would start doing open stock on all of their products, because I'm sure they'd do well from that. But saying that, you don't have to splash out for a 60 set of tube paints from them. You can actually buy a 12 set, and you can actually get a 24 set as well. Don't quote me on this, they might do a 48 set, I'm not sure. I think that might be with acrylics or something like that, I can't remember. There might be a 48 set with the watercolours, but you can certainly get a 12, 24 and a 60 set of these, which is okay, I guess. I mean, if you wanted to replace a few of your colours, it might be worth your while, particularly at these prices, buying the 12 set. You know, if those colours are all in that 12 set. Chances are they won't be, but you never know. It's worth a try, isn't it? And like I say, at these kind of prices, you know, who cares, you know? Okay, so let's get swatching them out then. Okay, so I'm using 3 sheets of Bockingford cold pressed watercolour paper to swatch these out on. As you can see there, I've got a black line, well, 2 black lines running through the paper there. That's just so that I can test the opacity of the paints. I'm putting them on quite thick over the black line there and seeing if it shows through. So I'm starting with the darkest area first, and then I'm using the water brush just to fade out the pigments so that they're nice and light at the bottom, so I can see basically you know, how transparent some of those opaque colours are, you know, how strongly pigmented they are and what they look like with a nice thin wash. And I can tell you straight away they're very, very strongly pigmented paints. So no disappointments there at all. Quite pleased with the strength of the pigments. There is a lot of filler in them, you can tell. They do feel chalky, they do dry, sort of very matte and chalky looking. But hey, you know, these are student quality paints, so we can't expect too much from them, and particularly at this price. But the true test of them will be when I actually do a few paintings with them. I mean, this is the first time I've used them, my first experience with them, and it's not fair to judge them at this stage. You know, we really do need to put them to the test and do a few full-on paintings with them, a few wet in wet style paintings, some detailed paintings, and just see how well, you know, the paints perform in a real life scenario. Okay, so we'll talk more about the paints as, you know, as soon as I finish swatching them out there. Okay. Okay, that's it, they're all swatched out. As you can see, there's no problem whatsoever, you know, now they're dry, with the brightness of the colour. And like I said as I was swatching them, you know, the pigment load is fantastic. You know, there really is a lot of pigment in these. Yes, you know, there's fillers in there because of the chalkiness. You know, you can feel the chalkiness, and particularly with some of the more opaque colours, they're bound to feel more chalky anyway. They do feel more like gouache than watercolour, to be honest. And like I say, there's a lot of opaque colours in there, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now you can see the transparency and the opacity of some of the colours here. This black line running along the top there, can't see it here on the cerulean blue, completely gone. Same with the cobalt blue. The ultramarine you can just make it out, but these are dark colours in all fairness. So if we look at some of the lighter colours, particularly yellow ochre, that's always you know, the usual suspect, isn't it, for being very opaque, and there's no exception there. But you can just still just make out the black line through it. Gamboge, that's okay. A lot of these on the top row here are actually pretty transparent, not too bad at all. Now, I didn't like the burnt sienna at all. You can see that that's opaque. Doesn't look like a burnt sienna to me at all. In fact, it looks more like something like a caput mortem or something like that, if you've ever used that colour. The burnt siennas that I'm used to and the burnt siennas that I prefer are a lot more orange than that. A lot more orange. So that's, you know, that's one that I wouldn't, you know, use on my palette actually. But the vermilion red is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Lovely, smooth, really nice quality colour, that one. If I was to paint that out blindfolded, you know, I wouldn't have a clue of what make it was or anything like that. If somebody just gave me a tube that they'd covered up and said, what do you think to that paint, I'd almost say that that one's artist quality. It's that good. It's a really nice colour. Wouldn't hesitate to use that on my palette at all. A lot of them are very good. I mean, I'm not just picking odd ones out here. A lot of them are very good. But there are too many, in my opinion, opaque colours which have been made from, you know, some of these single pigments here. And again, you know, it's very beginner friendly in that respect, but it's not going to encourage colour mixing or anything like that, you know, later down the line, if you're just going to rely on, you know, these kind of three pigment mixes and 4 pigment mixes. Again, there's nothing wrong with them. And if we look at some of these at the other end of the scale there, again, we've got some lovely, in fact, as I was looking at these earlier, on these two, if I turn these around this way, we'll get them all in the frame then. On these 2 cards alone, with that colour, and that colour, and those 2 colours, that colour, and those 3 colours there, you have got a fantastic, well, let's add that one in as well. You've got a fantastic selection of skin tones there. A really good selection. So, you know, for convenience sake alone, you know, in that respect, they are a wonderful set of paints, I guess. Now, when I look at this one, I'm going to just say one word, 2 words, in fact, neon pink. And that's all I'm going to say. We'll leave it at that. We'll say no more about that colour. In fact, it hasn't even got a pigment number. It's some sort of code there. I don't know what's going on with that one. Obviously, that's a colour I'd never, in my wildest dreams, use. I've never had a need to use a colour like that, ever, and I can't ever see me using a colour like that. So, obviously, you know, colours like that aren't aimed at landscape artists. You know, we're more into the, you know, the yellow ochres, gamboge, the blues, the greens, and the earth colours, things like that. But again, you've got a very comprehensive set of colours here. You know, if you're into cartoons or anything like that, you know, you've got all these kind of bright, overly bright sort of colours in there anyway to kind of play around with. If I just stop moving these around, and if I just try and get them all in the frame together and just leave them there, you can just have a really good look at them and get the idea. I mean, you can see that they're in no particular order as such, although I did notice a slight trend towards how many pigments were mixed in to each colour, but again, that wasn't perfectly accurate all the way through. But it does seem like we've got the largest selection of pigments mixed into one colour at this end, where as we start with white and the yellows, the lighter colours, these are more single pigments. Now, this card here is my favourite one of all of them, because not just because of the single pigments, because it's the most useful palette. If I was to actually choose 12 colours off of here to more or less resemble my palette and what I'm used to working with, well, let's say 14 colours, because I do use titanium white and I do have other odd colours on there. I would use titanium white, I would use the yellow pale, I would use the lemon yellow. In fact, I would use all 4 of those. I would use the vermilion, most definitely the vermilion, and the crimson red. The blues, we've got a phthalo blue there. I mean, that's always a useful colour. It's not everybody's favourite, and it's a real palette stainer. That'd be one that I would kind of swap in and out on my palette. Prussian blue, love that colour. That's nice, although it's very similar to the phthalo blue. Just a little bit cool on the cooler side. But yeah, anyway. Ultramarine, PB29, nothing new there. A little bit of granulation, nice colour. I'd have no hesitation in using that at all. Cobalt blue. Yeah, again, that's fine. A little bit opaque, but I'd use that. Cerulean blue, I would use that, although I don't particularly like this one. But yes, I could work with that, no problem at all. And I would choose a convenience green as well. And I think it'd probably be, looking at them all there, we've got a nice deep green there. I'd be torn between using any one of those 3 greens. I think they'd all be really nice to use as mixing greens, although most people would opt for the sap green because it's more of a natural colour and you can almost use it on its own, you know, for trees and foliage and things like that. Whereas this light green is very artificial looking and you'd need to definitely mix that in with other colours for landscape painting. This deep green you can use on its own. I really do like that colour actually. And we have got some kind of pre-mixed landscape greens in here. Seaweed green, we've got a viridian there. Again, you'll need to mix colours in with that. So you've got a really nice selection of natural greens. Some of them are very opaque, like the sage green there, the olive green, but still they're very nice colours in their own right. I think I'm really going to have fun actually playing around with some of the opaque colours in here, just to see what I can get them to do. There's some other really nice useful colours in here as well, like indigo for example. That's really nice colour. We've got a black, but we haven't got a Payne's grey, have we? I can't remember. Payne's grey. No, we haven't got a Payne's grey on there. So you've got an indigo there and we've got a black. Personally, I don't like to use black too much. I prefer Payne's grey, but I'd certainly make the indigo work there. You could mix the black with the indigo and get Payne's grey. And there's a lot of other colours there. For example, stone blue, ice blue. Obviously they're very opaque, but just as I look at them, they're kind of inspiring me. You know, I can see uses for them. And I think some of the colour mixes which Arteza have come up with, just for example like peach, mauve, light apricot, toffee, just some of these opaque colours, I think they look very interesting, and I think they've actually done a nice job of actually mixing these colours, you know, producing these colours. So the true test is, you know, it's okay swatching them out, but you know, what are they like when we use them in a real painting, you know, a wet on wet painting, and we're using some of these opaque colours. Is it going to make everything look muddy? Is it going to make everything look dull? We're just going to have to see, aren't we? So what we're going to do, we're going to get the Arteza sketchbook, and we're going to do a little painting, okay? Right, okay, so I'm using the smooth side of the paper for this one, obviously using the Arteza paints as well. And as you can see, it's going to be a bullfinch, and I've used a grid method there just to draw the picture out. And I'm getting some really nice detail on this paper because the paper's quite smooth and it's taken the washes quite well. I did notice though at the drawing stage that when I was erasing, the paper did start to lift and peel a little bit, so it's not the toughest paper in the world, but if you're gentle with it, it's quite nice to work on. I didn't encounter any problems. It's, you know, everything worked well, no problems at all. I did encounter one small problem with the paints though when I was doing a wet into wet painting off camera, but I'll show you that when this clip is finished. As you can see there, I'm going in with some coloured pencils now just to enhance things a little bit and just to test the paper to see if it'll take several layers of coloured pencil without showing any grain texture or anything like that. And again, the paper performed perfectly for this. So it's an ideal paper for mixed media work as well as just watercolour or graphite as well. It's great having, you know, two sides to the paper there. Okay, so the problem that I found with the paint, well, it's not really a problem, it's just it just behaves differently to other paints that I've used. And what it is, the paint doesn't diffuse out very well on wet paper. And I'll just show you what I mean. I've got a sheet of Bockingford here. I'm just going to wet it all over. Nice and even, nice and wet everywhere, so it's a fair test. Okay, and what I've done on the palette that I've been using for the Arteza paints, I've mixed up two ultramarine blues there. That one is the Arteza one, and that one is the Winsor & Newton Artist Quality. Now if I go straight into the Arteza one, and just, I don't know, just do something like that. I clean my brush and I'll go straight into the Artist Quality one. You can see straight away, look, how this bursts out into the wet paper. It diffuses straight away. Whereas that one doesn't really move. And quite a lot of the colours done that. There were one or two that didn't, for example vermilion. That was more like this, but in general most of the paints in the Arteza set don't diffuse very well into wet paper. So that can be a good thing or a bad thing. You know, if you're using this in a wet in wet painting style, and you may have some green or something mixed up for some foliage, and you want to do some distant trees and keep them nice and soft, but you don't want them to kind of burst out everywhere like this has, the Arteza paint will be ideal for that. You'll get a nice soft edge, you know, and it's not going to burst out all over the paper. So it's in that respect, it's more controllable, I guess, for a beginner. But if you want to do skies and things like that, where everything's all nicely blended in and diffused out, well, the Artist Quality is a much better option, in my opinion, you know, for this kind of effect. But for general, just soft edges, you know, without too much diffusing into the wet paper, the Arteza is the one to go for. But what I'll do, I'll just let that dry and we'll come back and we'll take a good look at the overall effect of what's happened there. Okay, so that's nearly dry. It's still just a little bit damp, but I don't think the paint is going to diffuse any more than it has done there. And this is actually probably not the best example, because if I'd have used more water in the Artist Quality and more pigment in the Arteza paints, this effect would have been a lot more pronounced. This would have run out a lot more, and that would have had a lot more of a harder edge on that than it's actually got. You know, that was what I was experiencing when I was doing some wet into wet landscape painting. But you can see, you know, how this is a really nice diffused soft edge here all the way around. I mean, just here on this one, it's quite a hard edge, in fact, on this side. You know, although we've got a soft edge there, it's, you know, it's not as soft as this. So in general, the paint really doesn't want to move too much, you know, on wet paper with the Arteza paints. Good thing or a bad thing, you decide. I mean, I said it was a problem. I take that back. It's not a problem. It's just a difference, you know, with the style of paints there. So, conclusion, I'm very happy with them, and the sketchbooks as well. I think for the price, you know, if you're a beginner, you know, and you've been to the art shop and you've been frightened by, you know, the price of Artist Quality paints in sets and things like that, I think you ought to, you know, check these out. I think they're a really good option for, you know, for people on a budget that are still looking for good quality paint. I mean, I'm going to certainly be using them. There's some colours in this range which I really like, and there's some of the opaque colours as well. And they're going to be making their way onto my palette, that's for sure. So I'll be using them. I think they're absolutely fine. And I'm going to use this you know, effect of it not bleeding out quite so much to my advantage. You know, when I'm doing wet into wet paintings, if I'm doing something like I don't know, distant cliffs or something like that, and I don't want this effect on the edge of a cliff I want more of this effect, just a soft edge, but I want a defined edge. These paints will be ideal for that. So you can actually use that to, to your advantage. So all in all, I'm very pleased with the products there. And I think Arteza really do a good job of keeping the price down and providing really good quality, student quality paints. And not just paints, obviously, the Sketchbook, that was fine as well, really nice quality. And as I mentioned before, there will be product links in the description below, and there'll also be a 10% discount for you. That's right, just as you thought it couldn't get any cheaper, there'll be a 10% discount voucher there for you in the description below if you're interested. Okay, so thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.